Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Quick question for everyone. What happens when the rapid pace of technological innovation outstrips the ability of regulators to keep up? Well, in the evolving world of Web3, this question is more pressing than ever. So today, I'm quite excited to be joined by Chrissy Hill. She's the Chief Legal Officer and Interim COO at Parity Technologies, a company at the forefront of building decentralized blockchain networks like Polkadot. And Chrissy brings with her a unique perspective on the fractured state of Web3 regulation, and also the impact that that has on things like creativity, innovation, all the fun stuff. So today, I want to dive into the importance of diversity, particularly female leadership, in shaping the future of Web3, and also how disruptive technologies like blockchain, like AI, are poised to transform the legal landscape, something we don't talk about very often, and today we're going to change that. Delivering daily content to 140,000 of you wonderful monthly listeners across the globe is no small feat. I don't want to take all the credit here because it wouldn't be possible without the backing of our dedicated sponsors and partners. Attention IT professionals, are you tired of juggling these multiple servers for secure file sharing? Integrated shared folders and email, plus a comprehensive REST API. Kiteworks simplifies your workflow. For administrators, you can experience unmatched functionality and integration that traditional MFT servers just can't touch. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks by going to kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com. And remember, Kiteworks is also FedRAMP moderate authorized. Thank you for your patience today. This is the moment you've been waiting for. It's time to welcome my guest onto the show. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to London, where you can sit down with myself and Chrissy, where we'll talk about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. It's a pleasure to talk to you. My name is Chrissy Hill, and I am the Chief Legal Officer and Interim Chief Operating Officer for Parity Technologies, which y'all will be forgiven for maybe not knowing off the top of your head what Parity does, but it's the leading contributor from a technical perspective to Polkadot, which is a blockchain protocol.
And there is so much hype around Web3. There has been for a number of years now. And one of the things that people keep talking about and the need for is regulation. So can you tell me the current state of Web3 regulation and why it's often considered fractured? It's probably a question you get a lot, but what are you seeing here?
Sure. And just as a quick side note, for everyone to help provide context, Dr. Gavin Wood, is the founder of Polkadot, and he was actually one of the co-founders of Ethereum. And he is actually the person credited with coining the term Web3. You will even find that in Ethereum's wiki and in various news sources. So the name itself is something that it's obviously very prevalent in the world today. And I also feel a special connection to it by virtue of working with the gentleman who is credited with coining the term. And that is actually part of the reason why I decided to join Polkadot and Parity Technologies, because I always felt that there was a strong influence and attention paid to law and regulation, which is, of course, my background. And something that while I was looking at entering the world of Web3, and this was almost 3 years ago now, I wanted to find some place that had a strong grounding in the more traditional world that I had come from. And when I joined in January 2022, certainly I had no idea that my desire to join an area and industry that would be at the frontier of law and regulation would actually be as wild as it has been for the past few years, because it has been fractured. And The reason why is because it's new, it's exciting, it's innovative, and everyone is still getting educated about it, wrapping their head around what it means, while the engineers are still iterating, right? So the regulatory space is quickly catching up to the technology, but you definitely see a broad spectrum of jurisdictions and how they've tackled innovation and their relationship with innovation, which I have found absolutely fascinating.
And I must admit, I get carried away as much as everyone else about that wild Web3 ride and the innovative space and how quickly things change. But deep inside, there is a very sensible, cautious IT guy that knows the importance of running these things. So how do you see a clear regulatory framework impacting some of those exciting things we're talking about, like creativity and innovation within the Web3 space? Because we spend maybe too much time on one area, but not the other. But it's so important, isn't it?
It is. And certainly one of the things that I have tried to do coming into the Polkadot community is help educate founders on their legal and compliance plan that they need to put in place from the outset. Because let's be honest, the engineers, they want to build. I look at engineers like artists, really. Their medium is code, but they're building and they're creating and they're innovating. And sure, it's not oil on canvas or bronze, but it's still something very creative and particular to them. And they want to focus on that and not on the operational elements of running a business. It's not necessarily their forte. So I think systems and jurisdictions that provide certainty in the form of good regulation for developers, for founders, so they can build that into their business plan, build that into their budgets. Because remember, a lot of these projects are super small. It might be, a one-person shop, or it could be something much bigger. When you have that certainty, such as what MiCA is delivering in the EU, whether you think it's good, whether you think it's bad, it's certain. That goes a long way to free up those people who do create and do build to focus on what they do best. And if you contrast that with other jurisdictions that have provided no certainty at all, what you see is an exodus of developers leaving that jurisdiction for other jurisdictions that do offer that certainty. And you're actually seeing that in the US. Coinbase just put out an article, I think in the last couple of weeks, about the sheer number of Web3 developers who are exiting the US because they want to go to jurisdictions like the EU, like the UK, also like Hong Kong and Singapore and UAE, who are creating sandboxes for innovation, who are actively attracting founders and developers because those are more favorable jurisdictions. So I would love to see certainty, but with good regulation.
100% with you. And I know the Polkadot community are incredibly passionate. They'll be hanging on your every word on a lot of things we're talking about here. So for everybody listening, what role does Parity Technologies play in helping to navigate and shape this regulatory landscape for blockchain and Web3 technologies that we're talking about here? Can you expand on what you do there?
Sure. So in my role as the Chief Legal Officer and Interim COO for Parity, which focuses on the engineering aspects, which focuses on the builders, we're located in the UK mostly and in Germany. We've really focused on those jurisdictions to understand developer liability, to also support the Web3 Foundation, which is the issuer of Polkadot's native token DOT, in order to liaise with regulators around the world to talk about DOT as, for instance, a utility token. So we help support the Web3 Foundation as the issuer of DOT historically, in order to engage in various jurisdictions to get the message out, to educate people. I mean, and this is also something that I have previous experience in, because I like to say I've worked for 4 great British names, and those are Linklaters, the law firm, Barclays, the bank, Tony Blair, the former UK Prime Minister, and now Dr. Gavin Wood, the co-founder of Ethereum and the founder of Polkadot. And so with that political hat on, especially working with Mr. Blair, this engagement with regulators is something that I'm familiar with and happy to engage with in order to educate. And I'll give you a quick story if you would indulge me, Neil. But when I first joined, I went to an event at the Houses of Parliament. I think it was like my first month. And of course, some of the people there knew me from my previous role with Mr. Blair. And one of the gentlemen came up to me, who's a member of Parliament, and shall remain nameless, and said, "Chrissy, you worked for Mr. Blair for almost a decade. Why have you joined a bunch of people who cannot even spell hold or build the right way?"
Oh.
And I laughed, Neil.
Yeah.
But then I stopped and I thought, actually, that means we're not doing our job properly if a legislator and if a very intelligent individual felt that way about the industry. We were being too exclusive by the use of acronyms, by the, approach that we take to what we're building that we're so proud of. It can be very opaque and intimidating to many people. And to not educate is a detriment to us all. And so I would like to think that I have, with my plain talking Southern ways, have helped to maybe make some complicated topics a little bit more digestible.
Absolutely love that. What a great story. And you also mentioned a moment ago, Mika. Of course, we're not talking about the pop singer. We're talking about the regulations. So how does the introduction of regulations like EU's Mika influence the direction of Web3 development and adoption? What are you seeing here?
I think it's early yet to tell.
Yeah.
I think you see more evidence of frustration where there is no certainty at all. I think there are so many jurisdictions right now that are providing a certainty and attraction that I think many founders and companies aren't putting their eggs into one basket, right? You see them setting up entities in a variety of jurisdictions rather than maybe just one where they have the resources to do so. And seeing how events develop. And I think next year will be a really important year, especially in Europe, as the member states begin to bring in place any requirements on top of the basic legislation. And I think that will influence a lot in terms of where projects are going. But definitely you are seeing more projects focus on those jurisdictions that are providing that certainty. I think there was a grace period where everyone knew that regulators and legislators didn't want to make mistakes. They wanted to learn. They wanted to take their time. But it's been a while now. I mean, Parity has been around for, quite some time. We're getting 5-10 years down the line with a lot of projects. So, it's time to give people the information they need to be successful.
And one of the things that really stands out for me is how you're really shining in what has traditionally been somewhat of a male-dominated environment, and not just the tech industry. You're talking about politically as well, and the likes of the MP who will remain nameless, I assume, was a male, but I don't know. But so I've got to ask, how important is this female presence and diversity in the Web3 space, and how are you supporting that initiative and bringing more people into this space too?
For me personally, being a mother, being a parent, actually has been something from a diversity angle that I didn't realize was going to be as important as it was. I didn't appreciate that I was raising the average age by 10 years when I joined Parity, right? And there were very few parents around. and very few females. I was the first female member of that particular C-suite at Parity. And I do look around the room frequently and do notice there is a higher number of males than females, although I think that has improved in the last couple years. And so I did not intend to be a first-generation female leader in any way, shape, or form. I had historically worked in male-dominated environments, corporate law, investment banking, politics, in some cases with governments where women weren't even supposed to be around the table. So that wasn't something that intimidated me. Yeah. But certainly being a first-generation female leader, I had role models before me who were female in all those other industries by at least, one, if not two generations. So I take that responsibility really seriously. Also, that responsibility of being a parent and modeling what that means for a work-life balance. I take that seriously as well. And also just trying to be a kind human in an industry that really is turned on 24/7 and moves so fast that, it can be very overwhelming to just people in general to stay up to speed with all the different developments, in the tech, never mind legal, compliance, tax, accounting, list it out. So I'm trying to combine all of that together, Neil, and just, role model the best that I can, knowing that I'm never going to get it right and I could always be better, but I shall try to be the best.
No, I think you are, and your passion for the subject really shines through today. And not just your passion for the topic, but also demystifying the technology, talking about it in a language that everyone can understand, and bringing in people that might be intimidated by the space. And on that side of things, how do you see disruptive technologies within Web3 potentially changing the way laws are applied and interpreted by people like lawyers, judges, and juries, etc.?
I think the legal profession I think at first it was very scared by how blockchain and AI in particular were being talked about. But again, an interesting fun fact. Do you know that blockchain technology was first invented in the early 90s by Haber and Stornetta at the request of lawyers and judges so they could time and date stamp documents. And that actually is quoted in the blockchain white paper. I think it's like footnote 5 or 6, Haber and Stornetta's research. And then, of course, Merkle trees were added later and it developed from there. But again, I feel like when lawyers hear that particular fact, you become more comfortable with it. Also, a fact that I think particularly helps my generation, I'm a Gen Xer, I'll proudly proclaim that, is that we all know a lot more about coding than we give ourselves credit for. Because we all started off on those little Apple green screen computers where you actually had to type in commands to get things to print, to get the system to run. I mean, we all remember that. I mean, that's first steps in programming, right? Of course, it has advanced and there's programming languages. And I always apologize to the engineers. I'm not trying to downplay or anything that they do. But I feel like giving people that kernel of connection is, again, something that goes a long way to helping people see the benefits. And I think with lawyers, if you start out, okay, well, it's time, it helps us time and dates the documents. Okay, well, then how can it be useful as evidence, right? And then, what is the efficacy of the information that's going into the blockchain? How do we prove that? What ethical systems can you put in place in order to show that it's not hearsay? So I'm talking from a very criminal kind of law perspective. And then, how could juries vote in a way that, couldn't be changed so there's no human interference? I think we're now getting to that next level of detail and also looking at the enforceability of smart contracts, looking at cross-jurisdictional cooperation, looking at how, from a logistics perspective or a supply chain perspective, you can follow the chain of custody for things very easily using blockchain. The benefits are starting to become greater. And then also blockchain and AI together. Scary at first for a lot of lawyers. Is it going to take our jobs? But actually, when you realize blockchain can provide useful guardrails for AI to address legal issues like trademark, like IP, like privacy, and you still need lawyers to help interpret and build that and understand the technology, you begin to see how we can evolve as a profession as well, which brings me to my book, which is Tomorrow's Lawyers by Richard Susskind. But I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later, Neil. But I just wanted to throw that in as a great resource for any lawyers who might be listening to peruse.
Love that. And as a proud Gen Xer myself, my introduction to computing was going into supermarkets as a young boy and finding those computers on sale and typing out 10 print, Neil is cool, 20, go to 10. Now, so one bit of programming that's stuck with me all these years.
I know. Well, somebody asked me the other day, this is funny. They were like, do you know what a Commodore 64 is? I was like, yeah, I had one. And they were like, wow. I was like, I didn't see the dinosaurs, but I did have a Commodore 64.
Yeah, I was a big Commodore 64 guy as well. And looking to the future, though, I mean, what are the biggest challenges that you foresee in implementing things like robust Web3 legislation and anything that you're looking to overcome to address those challenges?
It's actually us. It's actually boomers and Gen Xers who are in power right now as politicians, governments, corporate leaders, because whether they feel uncomfortable or threatened by the technology and are blocking it for whatever reason, I think it's ultimately fruitless, because my 13-year-old and 8-year-old spent 2 years of their lives on Roblox, dealing with Robux, being comfortable with their virtual identity. This is how they think the world should work. Because, my kids being in London and, we were properly on lockdown. We couldn't leave the house. They weren't going to school. So their existence really was, with their friends in particular, was virtual. And so I think this digital economy, this digital identity is inevitable. And we have to do it carefully. We have to do it thoughtfully. We need to be very mindful of the dangers, not go too fast. But I don't think this train can be stopped. And so we might as well get on board and make sure it's going to the best possible destination that supports everybody.
100% with you. And one other topic that we got to mention whenever talking about Web3 space is mass adoption. So looking ahead to the future, would you anticipate there how we're going to increase mass adoption into this space, and especially in relation to regulatory frameworks as well? What are you seeing on the road ahead? Anything excite you there?
So I think with mass adoption, we're getting there. I think there was a negative perception to overcome for Web3 because people naturally lump everybody together in the same category, and we're not all SBF. We are not all FTX. And blockchain technology is certainly more than just cryptocurrencies. And I think people are beginning to become more comfortable with that concept and seeing the benefits. I actually think that the U.S. attorney on the same Sam Bankman-Fried case said it best. He said it to the jury, and he said, listen, the technology is new. Yeah. The players are new. But what we're dealing with is as old as time. It's humans lying, cheating, and stealing. And that has nothing to do with the technology. Yeah. And I thought that was such a fantastic way to frame the conversation. And I think because of the persistence of the industry, because of the continued dialogue with regulators, and just because of the interest in Web3 in general. We are seeing people become more comfortable. Businesses start to use it. I think we're going to have to be more comfortable with that. People say they want mass adoption, but that means regulation. It just does. So you can't have one without the other. But again, if it's good regulation and it's still fostering innovation, then I hope we can live with that and live with the spirit of inclusivity for everyone and not just those who are tech savvy. And I think, again, on the Web3 side of the conversation, more and more people are talking about the world and where we're going in that way. So I'm positive about it.
And I think that is a powerful moment to finish on. But before I do let you go, I always ask my guests to leave everyone listening with one final gift, a book that they would recommend that we can add to an Amazon wish list where listeners can go and browse through those books. I think you may have already left a little spoiler out of the bag, but what book would you like to add to our Amazon wish list and one?
Well, I'll give you two. One, and it's written by a father and son, Richard Susskind and Daniel Susskind. So Richard Susskind is the president for the Society for Computers and Law in the UK and a technology advisor to the Lord Chief Justice of England and Wales. And so he's written this book specifically about what tomorrow's lawyers need to look at, what they need to educate themselves about, what they need to focus on in order to be successful. And his son, Daniel Susskind, wrote The Future of Professions. So it goes way beyond just the law and goes into, all kinds of professions, and how, again, technology is going to impact those professions: health, education, divinity, journalism, management consulting, architecture. The list goes on and on. So I would definitely say, in this brave new world that we're creating, it is worth reading and listening to authors like the Susskinds, listening to people such as yourself to help see down the road a bit and what we should be striving for.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I've genuinely, absolutely loved talking with you. And for everyone listening, maybe they want to carry on the conversation, dig a little bit deeper into some of the topics we explored together today. Where's the best place for them to find you or your team online and find out more about anything we talked about today, or even join the Polkadot community?
Sure. Well, I would always love to have a conversation about law and regulation with anyone if they want to geek out with me about that in Polkadot. You can find me on Twitter or X. It's at USC Hill. And on LinkedIn, Chrissy Hill, you'll find me. And if you want to find out more about Polkadot, it's polkadot.com or polkadot.network. And you can get to Parity from the Polkadot site. So I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation. And Neil, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you for a lovely Friday afternoon chat.
No, thank you. I will get everything added to the show notes so any member of the community can find out more information on anything we talked about today. And if you're outside the community, maybe you have been intimidated by this space in the past. Hopefully this conversation has eased your passage in. But as for yourself, Chrissy, just love chatting about the fractious state of Web3 regulation, the impact this can have on creativity and innovation in the space, but also shining a light on your female presence and the importance of diversity in this space. We don't talk about it enough. So a big thank you for sharing your story today.
Well, it's always a pleasure. And I definitely, I will say to anybody who wants to strike out into this Web3 world, if you're looking for something that's boring, this is not the place for you. But if you're looking for always being stimulated and something new happening, even in the more traditional worlds of law and regulation, this is the place for you.
As Chrissy highlighted, the intersection of regulation, innovation and diversity in Web3 presents both challenges and opportunities. And the path to widespread adoption of this technology, I think, depends on clear and balanced regulations. Not to mention a commitment to diversity and a forward-thinking approach to how emerging technologies could reshape traditional industries. But what does the future hold? Can regulators keep pace with innovation? And how will this impact the Web3 landscape? I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the pressing issues that we've highlighted today. And this conversation, like every conversation on this Daily Tech podcast, it's not just about me and the guest. I want to bring each and every one of you into the conversation. I always say at the end of every episode, in a cheesy way, technology works best when it brings people together. So please, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you hang out, you can get me on @NeilC.Hughes, but I'm not asking you to just hit that follow button. Send me a quick DM, ask me a question, tell me what you thought, highlight things that you thought we forgot about on this discussion today, or areas that you'd like to come on here and talk about with me. Let's keep this conversation going. But that is it for today's episode. If you're new to the podcast, I'll return again tomorrow morning and we'll talk about a completely different industry and a different area and how technology is transforming it. But that is it for today. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.